Hello. So I'm going to wait for a few more people to join us. Um, hello. So we are talking to our photographer today, Alyssa Fortin. She's based in Massachusetts, so we're going to talk to her all about her amazing photography, which is primarily underwater. Sometimes she's above the water. We'll talk to her about all everything that goes into that. I've been really excited to have this conversation, so I'm really pumped. I hope everybody else is. I see her here now, so I'm going to send her an invite. Let's see if she joins us. Here she is.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Much better than yesterday.
Yeah, this was a quick one. We knew what we were doing this time. Love it. So I did a really quick little intro, but for the people who have joined in the last minute since I started, I'm just gonna say it one more time. So I am with Sorrel Gallery. My name's Christine. Today I am talking to Alyssa Fortin, who is one of our amazing photographers. We're gonna talk all about it, but basically you can see some of her work behind her, and which is stunning. She does this underwater women. I guess those are the two primary subjects, but we're going to talk a lot more just about everything that goes into it, which I said this already. I'm going to say it again. I've been really excited to talk to you because you see the final product, and it's almost like you just think, I have no idea how that came to be, but it's stunning, and that's it, you know. But when you actually dive into kind of what goes into creating something like that, it looks like it's from a different world.
Perfect.
When you get that, when you get the actual behind the scenes shots, and we're going to have a blog with all the images. If anyone hasn't, please go back and see our reel where you can actually see, sort of footage of Alyssa working. It's a totally different, totally wild, juxtaposition of things. So all that said, if anyone has questions for Alyssa throughout, pop them in the comments. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on them. Obviously, I have my own questions, but I'll do my best to integrate. If anything pops up for you, let me know, and I'll try to make sure that we ask her. So, Alyssa, we're going to get started. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So first we'll just start, where are you from originally? Where are you now? And a little bit more substantially, how did you get started as an artist? Not only just as an artist, but really with what your current body of work.
Okay. I say I'm from Florida. I went to high school in Florida, all girls Catholic school, and then Atlanta, but we ended up moving here to Massachusetts in 2001. Okay, that's
It's a while ago now.
And how I got started as an artist, just to go way back, I've always loved art. My favorite gift I wanted for Christmas and birthdays was the Crayola, little kid. And that led to me wanting to study art in college. And I went to the University of Florida and have a bachelor, a BFA in fine art. And while I was there, I had a focus on photography, but I didn't. My degree was in drawing and painting. So that was the beginning of photography. And then I graduated and got a master's in art education from UGA. And then my first job was teaching high school art. And what they taught you in college was how to be creative. They did not teach you the technical side of art. So my first job teaching 32 high school kids and having to teach them how to use my camera. And this is, when everything was film, and how to use the darkroom. And that led me to really have to study the technical side of photography, because they thought it was so funny to laugh at their teacher by not being able to describe something exactly perfect.
Right.
And I think the benefit of that is, So then when I started having kids, I started a career in portrait photography. But the benefit of, first of all, the studying it in college and truly knowing how my camera worked, I was able to create, I could have a vision of a picture and actually able to create it because I truly knew how my camera worked.
Right.
Then we moved to Massachusetts, and I had 2 kids by that point, and I had a 3rd kid. And teaching does not work with being a mom. And so I started my career as a portrait photographer. And that was black and white, old-fashioned film, old-fashioned camera. And this was shortly after that was when digital first came out. And another creative friend of mine and we decided to go to a conference to get started, like full force into portrait work. And before I went to this conference, what I said was, I'm either going to buy a digital camera when I come home, or I'm going to figure out exactly what I need for film. And went to the conference and was so inspired and said, I don't really care if everyone else is going digital at this point. I am sticking with film because what's important to me is the art, doing the best I can do, creating the best product I can do. That's so much more important to me than making the highest profit margin on each picture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a ramble, right? So
that's okay. Hey, I mean, I like it. Because there's so many steps to how you end up in a place, so it's all good.
So okay, so that was like well, this is a total ramble. So like I always say that my life like parallels with my running, and I'm out running with my 6 girlfriends, and we're all encouraging each other to be the best person we can be. And I make the announcement that I'm going to become a portrait photographer, and they are like, you go for it, Alyssa. And within a couple years, I took over the market, and I was a photographer. I mean, the person who I took over the market from is not listening to this, but it was really, really fun to see my business double every year, and I loved that I became very invested in my community. It's a small New England community of 20,000 where everybody knows everybody, and I probably photographed half of the community. And when people, I would do their newborn shoots, and I'm still doing them actually. I don't say no to this type of work, and I would be capturing their family for 20 years, and all the way up until their graduation pictures. And even if I don't love graduation pictures, of course, I want to capture these people that have grown with me. Right. And it's just really, like, I hope I'm invited to their weddings, and I feel like they know I know them, and what was, again, more of a ramble, like from one year to the next, like kids would know exactly what I was looking for in a picture, and which is completely different, not completely different. I'm going to show you an example of what I did as a film photographer. It's like there's jokes that, okay, this is actually a picture of my kids, like way back. No smiles, just real. I'm going to show you one more. And this is, and this again, like this, like I say, so many of my clients become my friends. And, that's an example of someone who I've been friends with for the last 12 years. Okay, moving on from that. So then,
so we got the commercial portrait photography piece, and really what it sounds like is a lot of your work is really about connection and relationship and capturing something that's emotive and raw and real, the reality of, you say like kids with no smiles, that happens. So now from there, how did we end up with this, body of work that's different and maybe not so different? I guess that's the question.
Yeah. Well, okay. So then I was ready for a huge year like everybody else, and then the pandemic came. Yeah. And had next to nothing in work, and I need to create. So I had my my friends' muses. And every time I'd have an idea, I'm like, do you want to go play? You know, and we'd head off and do some project. And so I just bought an underwater case for my camera, and I wanted to play with it, experiment with it. So myself and a few of my creative friends, we asked if we could borrow one of our friends' pools, and a yogi showed up and an influencer showed up, and my friend who is a fashion designer, she came, and we all brought some models, and I wanted to experiment with movement underwater for whatever reason, and ballerina showed up, and so did this shoot, and super fun, and just everyone's just goofing off, and came home and uploaded the pictures, and one of the pictures from that shoot is still my favorite picture, and someone famous bought it, actually.
Oh.
So anyway, so as soon as I saw that picture, I knew that I was onto something, and from that point forward, ballet dancers. That the first year was other types of dance also, but I like ballet dancers better, and females became a subject.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you find that background in black and white traditional photography in any way informs how you approach these really different, you're underwater, you've got a, I assume now you've switched to digital now with your situation. So how do you find that like your approach is you're taking some of that and injecting it into this process, or is it kind of like a whole new world for you and you're kind of just starting fresh?
Okay, so probably both. So let's see. So let me start by saying that, like, the difference in the approach. There are some photographers who actually do film underwater, and it would be amazing, but well, and actually, let me just say the approach that it would be so ridiculously expensive that I'm not going to go there. Mm-hmm. But what I love about digital, and even like for the last, I don't know, 10 years, let's say, the last 10 years, for whatever stupid reason, I'm bringing my digital camera. Oh, I know why. I'll tell you. I'm bringing my digital camera and my film camera to every shoot I do, because just like the rest of the world, I want instant gratification too. So the film I have to send off, and it comes back a week later, and I want to come home and see what I got. Right. So anyway, and the advantage to digital is there's not expense to it. So, and even like playing back and forth with the portrait work, like what I love about the digital is I can be freer, and I don't have to think that. I mean, like, now, like if I click the button on my film camera, I think it cost me like $2, and for each time I click the button, and that's not even a picture. So I love that I can play more and be freer with. So let's see.
I think you answered it. Like just that you have more freedom, so you're gonna. I think you're gonna have a different approach to your work when that freedom is innate in the actual process of like taking the shot. You're not restricted. So that's actually. I think that did answer the question.
Well, and actually, let me say one way that it's very different. Like, well, actually, two ways. So first of all, like my brain thinks like a black and white photographer now. Mm-hmm. Like I see the world as black and white, and then sometimes when I show up and I do a digital shoot, I realize I missed it because I'm thinking of textures and tones, and and the other point there. Oh, and I've trained myself as a portrait photographer. So throughout this new process, I have to keep reminding myself that I am not creating portraits. Like, I do not recognize the person. Someone's not, I mean, my negative, like I loved my film work, but you're only going to buy that picture if you're the parents. So, and I think it's still true if, for the most part, that I had to figure out how to move away from portraits and create a more abstract image that is a suggestion of a person, but not actually a person. And that was really fun training to just push myself in a different direction.
Yeah, I love that. That's like that is the perfect. It's you're capturing a suggestion of a person rather than a person. That's like and that's exactly like that's how your work feels. I think like the underwater photography. It really is. It's like that's why I said it like looks like you're in a different world, and this is sort of like ethereal and everything. So it is like it's suggestive. So obviously we've talked about how you've got an underwater camera. You're capturing people beneath the surface of the water. So could you just briefly walk us through what the creative process looks like? So that could be as early as like preparing for a shoot, what goes into that, and then like how do you conceptualize it? Maybe you really can't. Maybe you just kind of have to like get in the water and see what happens. And how does that go from loosely from start to finish for if you go like, okay, I'm gonna make a new series or I'm gonna do this again. What does that look like for you?
Okay, so starts with kind of just like studying nature, studying like my feed now is like filled with ocean pictures,
Yeah.
I'm screenshotting, some jellyfish that's just, and kelp pictures and so it starts by just studying nature, and then it's also studying dance and ballet, and I've made it go to as many ballets and as many performances as I can go to, studying how other photographers capture just capturing ballet dance on a stage, and that might spark a connection between two people. It might spark how positive and negative space. Studying the ocean as one idea, like then I'll try to create costumes that emulate the same feel or movements that I see in these underwater pictures. And then also was looking to Greek mythology for stories, and just to try to get what I like my goal now and leading even more into the future is trying to make more pretty picture. So have a conceptual idea and have like key points that, and this is just to try. If it's a failure, then it's a failure and we move on. But to go to the shoot and say, okay, here's an idea. Let's try to act out this story and see what happens. And then so that's all the whole behind the scene, creating the costumes, and then finding pools and finding ballet dancers who want to work with me. And over this process, I have found probably more than a handful of women who are amazing ballet dancers and wonderful people to work with. And
Cool.
And then that's it. Okay.
All right. So what do you find most, let's start with most challenging about this process, because there's got to be challenges, obviously, like, we've talked about how you move from kind of like, from traditional photography into like digital, and probably I would imagine there were some kinks to work out maybe. So, and just for you, like going from like now I'm photographing someone, like there's air between us and then suddenly there's water between us. So what is that? What are some of the challenges for you? And was there like a learning curve, like where things came up and you went, oh, I actually have to like figure out how to overcome that obstacle now? What were maybe some of those things?
Okay, so so it's very different than being a photographer.
Yeah.
Well, actually, a complete positive though, which is not like a positive, but four of my favorite subjects were 2, 5. I mean, I loved capturing children, but really hard because but they can't follow direction.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about working with adults is you can actually explain an idea and they can do it.
Right.
And it's like, as a portrait photographer, it's a game to get kids to do certain things. And most challenging, it's, I think it's a different, like as a portrait photographer, I could have a concept and actually plan a shoot around it. And besides the children issue that don't always do what you want them to do, you could play it out. And there's a lot of things going against you, and it's it could show up, and maybe the ballet dancer, what I found was you have to really be a good swimmer. So sometimes people would show up, and if I didn't work with them before, I didn't know that they didn't know how to swim.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
or we'd show up and the pool wasn't heated, or the water was like really mucky, and we had to figure out, okay, my visibility is really bad, and my camera's not focusing. So today we're going to concentrate on close-up pictures, so I don't have to be as subject. So and on that same note, like when in the mucky pool, well, first of all, we tried to create like more mysterious pictures, and we tried to use the light of the pool. I didn't like the end results, but just anything to get close to the subject in more light.
Okay. Okay. Now, you've kind of touched on this a little bit. So you found ballet dancers. That's kind of the direction you went in. Some of them don't swim as well. How did you find ballet dancers? Like, where do you go to look for them, or how did you find the ones that you want to work? I mean, was it like an Instagram post, like call for ballet dancers who can hopefully swim pretty well?
So I started at the beginning. I actually started with an Instagram call for models.
Okay.
I reached out to a local ballet company, and again, remember that this is the pandemic. So during the pandemic, everybody's home and looking for you. And like one of the positives, so one of my favorite ballet dancers was home from, I think she was in a ballet company in Paris, and she was home without work. So starting with reaching out to, with the ballet company, who was already, this is right when I just got the camera, and I was just completely, or the housing unit, and I was playing with it, but started off with, the ballet company saying, okay, I have 10 kids ready to work with you. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But whatever I do, I'm going to learn something from it. And like the pictures of these little kids, they're so cute. But it's not the angle that I wanted to go in. But again, loved working with them, totally fun. Right. And learned also, how to use my camera, how to use the case better, and any screw ups, it was all just pre-shoots that people got JPEGs or whatever. And then from there, it was pretty much a friend of a friend, my daughter's friend who did ballet at Boston Ballet, and her sister. And and I know this person who I've danced with my entire life. And so each shoot, I would just do a call. Okay, can you ask one of your friends to show up, or two of your friends? And then from that, it was kind of, I saw which models there was more of a connection with, and I would ask those to come back.
Okay. All right. That's cool. So you kind of like narrowed your pool. Well, no pun intended. Right. You narrowed your pool down a little bit and figured out who's.
And really I'm also like, I probably want to bring it back out some.
Okay.
Working well, and it actually is. I mean, the women who I will be working with this year, the email I got yesterday was just, I'll ask around within her company and these are the women who I have, they're professionals, and I have gone to see them dance, and I know that they would be really good as long as they can swim.
Right. That's kind of the key. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to sort of backtrack a little bit, because first I asked, what's the challenge? And you kind of started to say like a positive or like more rewarding thing is that you're able to work with adults. Is there anything else that you found like really rewarding about, as being a fine art photographer and kind of like with this new subject?
All right, great question. Okay, what I loved, not the most, there's many about this project, but I'm going to back up to the film. Okay, so when I started as a film photographer, I had a girlfriend who, we started together in portraits, it's in black and white film. And I'm telling you, we could sit for hours and discuss how to focus your camera. Like it was, and that was like super fun. And that was, a challenge, was just like how to take a picture that actually turned out.
Yeah.
But then like 25 years into it, I didn't have to prep as much anymore. I mean, I had like my 10 minutes of prep before I shoot, but pretty much show up and do a great job. Like I knew my spots. I knew, how to work with the kids. And I still loved it because I always loved working with the kids in the community, the parents in the community. It still brings me satisfaction. But what I loved the most about this project was it was the first time in many, many years that my brain was starting to think creatively again. And, problem and how do I solve it? And why don't we try this idea in the pool? And how about we try this idea? And, the when you wake up in the middle of the night, an idea, like I haven't had that for a while. And that's probably one of the things I've loved the most about this more recent project is it's new and it's exciting. I've only just begun. Like there's so much more I can do with it.
Yeah, very cool. I love that. You also kind of like very briefly talked about this. So the Greek and Roman mythology, why Greek? What? Because you said like when we were talking about kind of like where you were looking for inspiration, how do you prepare? You said that you read Greek and Roman, but like how did that start? Where did that come from? Because for anyone listening who doesn't know, I think it's all of your titles are based on Greek and Roman mythology, right? Why? What's the significance there?
So, so I work with a professional writer, and she and I collaborate on this part of the project. And it seems like most stories out there started with these Greek stories, and the mermaid, and all of them. They go all the way back to the Greek and Roman stories. And it was just a place for inspiration, and we would work it both ways. We would work it that we would have, and she's an excellent writer, and I'm so happy that she is a part of my life and a part of my project. And we would come up with series of pictures, and then find stories that would well, we would find stories, but we would rewrite them. So most stories, the female dies or kills herself because her husband or her boyfriend becomes so that the women would rise above and be their own strong independent person,
right?
And then we would do them opposite, like we'd come up with, okay, this is the story we would tell, and let's see what happens if if the dancers act it out.
Right. And that's kind of like a really good move into my next question, which was going to be, it's always women in water. So why women? And it sounds like you kind of like are touching on that a little bit. Like, it is a lot of women in these stories. So and so kills herself because of whatever. But that like kind of like rising up and kind of that resolve that you get at the end of a lot of those stories. Why women? What was that? What was it that drew you to that subject too?
I think, well, and people have asked me, do I want to have any male models? Yeah. And I think the answer is no, because it would create a different type of portrait than I'm creating. And why women? So for me, women have always been very important in my life, and I went to all girls Catholic school. And, I run this is kind of a joke in my town, but I say I'm the president of a running club. I'm the president. But I have a rec group that we go every morning together, and always trying to encourage each other to be the best. And more recently, I have a whole group of creators. They're all women, and they're all doing fabulous things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So that's just who I am as a person. I think that the women relationship has always been important in my life.
That's interesting. I'm going to ask you a question that popped into my head when you were kind of talking about like the pools being murky. So I'm going way back now. I'm jumping all over the place, but I don't want to. I don't want to stop. I don't want to end our conversation without asking you this. So you had mentioned that sometimes the pools were really cold. Sometimes the pools were murky. Sometimes if the dancers aren't great swimmers, have you ever, speaking of like, would you ever consider, have you ever thought about going into like shallow, clear ocean water and doing this? Or is that like way more than you've ever like even wanted to attempt? Because I'm thinking like you're from Florida, right? So I'm thinking like, coastline in the south, it's shallow. A lot of times, like I live in the Northeast too. I go down there, I'm like, this is so clear, it's so warm. So has that ever crossed your mind, or is that like, no, I don't want to deal with fish and all?
Oh no. Actually, I was just thinking this when I was in Florida a couple weeks ago. So I'm from Florida. I think I have only been in the ocean in New England 2 times in 23 years.
Yeah.
It is freezing cold here, and I am not a New Englander. So up here, the answer is absolute no.
Right.
But yes, definitely. I've thought of a couple things of, yes, down in Florida. I mean, it's a lot of stuff, but I think it would be worth it, and I think it would be really fun to do it in clear water down there. So
Right. Okay, well, I'm very excited to see if that ever happens, because I feel like the colors would be crazy. I mean, it might change the vibe a little bit because you have these deep, rich, dark colors a lot of times, but you have some photographs that are a little bit brighter and more of that teal color. So I feel like it could work. And it would be very cool if you got some of those jellyfish going by that you're looking at.
it would be really cool to add in an environment, a natural environment.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, like a piece of seaweed or something is just like floating by. That would be crazy. All right, well, I'll be on the lookout for anything like that. That's exciting. So next question is, from your first shoot, well, let's say from this work to now, which it sounds like you started this in around like 2020. So you've got around 3 years you've been doing this. So what has changed overall, or has it been pretty consistent? Like, or I know you said you're kind of moving into trying to be a little bit more conceptual about it, but is there anything that you even noticed visually where you're like, oh, I'm doing that a lot differently now?
Okay, so what I'm trying, I think, yes, a lot has changed. First, well, at the beginning, I was working with, just to kind of help my friend out. Actually, and I don't think you've seen any of these pictures. The ballerinas were wearing bathing suits,
Mm-hmm.
and as a beautiful bathing suit line or skirt line. And so I was like, oh, let's just let the ballet dancers wear your bathing suits, use them on social media, and so can I. And by the end of that first year, I do not want my images to be sexy. And so I wanted to do away with the stomach showing, and it just be nude, for the most part, nude leotards.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. And just continuing to move, trying to think how, back to the before, how can it be less of a portrait? And is it that, actually Sorel Gallery has the rights to one of the images, and it's shooting from the back, do not see the face, and working with different fabrics. Actually, I'm going to tell you a story on the last shoot of the first season. What we were doing, pretty much up until this point, was the girls were doing poses underwater, but like I was trying to show movement. And so what we realized, the last, we've already been working in the pool probably 4 hours with two young girls, like 16 and 17. And um, what we decided to do was get like a small piece of fabric that girls could dance with, and the goal of that they would hold in their, and the goal of that was, I was waiting for that moment where I couldn't see the face, when skirt would fly up into your face, or your hair would come over your face. And I was like, what if we had to hold this piece of fabric and then dance? And so the last 15 minutes, each girl gets 3 more times underwater. Um, the model actually danced underwater with this piece of fabric, and like when it was happening, I knew it was magic, and I knew what was being created. It ended up being my favorite images of the entire season. And it was just like such a bummer that was like it was too cold, the kids were going back to school, and I was so ready to start up at that point when the next season began. Okay, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because you've kind of touched on this a lot, towards the beginning, like the fact that you have, more freedom and you're being creative now, and there's all that. But yeah, absolutely. I think I think you definitely answered the question. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self as an artist, what would it be? Or even just as a photographer, let's say, since you've kind of had this more technical background and then you've moved into it. So
okay, so
or as a person, even. It doesn't have to be as an artist. You can be just as an individual. What's a piece of advice?
I'm going to bring this back to right when I got started as a film photographer. So probably before that, I would look at the picture and I'd be like, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. I can do that. And I went to this conference, and the entire conference was about figuring out who you are as a person, as an artist. And, at the time I was like, where is this leading? Like, what's your first memory? And give 5 words that describe you. And when, after that conference was when my film work completely changed. And, then what I realized was, if I described myself, my personality, I'm honest, I'm direct, I'm, straightforward, real. And those are the type of images that I started creating. So my advice to artists would be to figure out who you are as a person, and figure out what's important to you, and create work that is about that.
Love that. What is your goal as an artist, or did you just answer that question? Because that's kind of maybe that was a 2-for-1. It kind of sounds like that might be the goal. But if you have a different goal, please share it.
Well, I think I think no, I actually think the goal is more to create art that, but do it, I guess, from what I just said, do it in
an authentic way, right? Okay, that's very cool. Okay, we're gonna do something a little different now. I think one thing I want to say before we move into this next portion of our talk, which is not super related to artwork, I just want to say, I don't know if anyone else feels like this listening. I have to say, so obviously there's a lot of prep that goes into this type of a talk. I've seen footage, I've combed through many photos and videos of you working now. I said at the beginning that kind of was, super eye-opening and very cool to witness, to actually see what goes into making this very, very dramatic and beautiful photo. But having talked to you now, I just want to say I've gotten a whole new perspective on your work. I have a background in arts management. So, my graduate degree was about the cultural industry and how wide that spans. That can be food, that can be performance, that can be, speech, that can be the way people talk, it can be language, right? So there's a lot that goes into that. But I just want to say one thing that I now appreciate about your work in a whole new way again is how you've crossed. We think we're just looking at an image, but we're really not. We've crossed across the cultural industry. We've got fine art, the technical aspects of photography, we've got performance, and we've got writing even. You work with a writer. So that, I don't know if anyone, oh, someone just said I'm one of her models and I've loved working with Alyssa. So that's really nice.
Who that person also is, her mother is the writer.
Okay. Okay, full circle. Very cool. So yeah, so I really, that is something that's my big takeaway from this experience. And I've looked at your work extensively. So, you know, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, just kind of like popping in to listen, but that's actually, I think, one of the, obviously I'm a big fan of your work, but that was the big piece of this, was you talked about a lot of different people being involved in this process. And I think it's really, really admirable how you recognize the way that all of them can be involved in something. As you know, at the end you have an image, that's what you've got, but it wasn't just the image, it was the dancer, and it was the writer, and it was the title, and it was the story behind it, and there's a lot more going on there. And I think that adds so much dimension. A lot of times you look at a piece and you're like, that's a beautiful aerial photograph or whatever, and that's beautiful, and that can be enough. But when you hear this stuff about, you know, what goes into this kind of a process, I think it really brings it to the next, it increases its value. It just brings it to the next level. So that's my key takeaway.
So hang on, I want to back up just to make sure that I've given the credit to, the one point that I didn't say on that note is, you know, I'm working with professional ballet dancers.
Yeah.
And the skill set, and the, you know, what I love about it is they are so dedicated to their art, and it shows in the pool also. And, you know, one of the women I work with, she's amazing, and she'll do it. She'll do whatever we're trying to, and, you know, and because they're professionals, I also, we're creating something together when we show up at the pool. And I am not there to just direct you. I don't know dance also. So they bring as much of the creative ideas that we're going to play around the pool, and some are good and some are not. But it's also, I want to create that feel of we're just there to play in the pool. And I'm going to tell you 2 points here. So the first one is the model would do the pose, then she would come up, I can do better, and then she'd do it again, and then she'd come up, I can do better, and she just kept saying that over and over again. And yeah, you know, that's the nature of being a balancer. And
yeah,
one of the shoots last year I loved the most was 2 professional ballet dancers showed up, and they have kids, and it's summertime, so I'm like, okay, bring them, you know. So we have, you know, 2 8-year-olds, and I'm telling them, okay, you're allowed to play on the steps behind me, but, you know, and so they had a great pool day. And then we borrowed a pool. I can't believe that she let me do this. We borrowed a pool from a woman who just had triplets. I don't think they were all girls. Triplets, and had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So we're at their pool using it for the day, and it was just this. And then we have the moms. No, we didn't have the moms. And then the models were the 2 women in the pool. But it was just this great girl power. And of course, your kids are invited, and
right.
And kids.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yes, it's so, yeah, I mean, I think there's this kind of, with photography especially, it's like this sort of like it's like a spectator experience. And actually what you're doing is collaborative. It's all collaboration, right? Like it's totally, you're kind of like flipping that around a little bit. So that's awesome. All right. We've been talking over 40 minutes, so I'm just going to do a quick run through of some this or that questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. So are you a morning person or a night person?
Morning for sure. Okay. Yes, I have my group of friends that I'm texting between 5:30 and 8. You know, I know who's up early.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's a joke that the amount of work that we get done during our morning run, like we're working the entire time as we're discussing, you know, whatever we're doing for the day.
All right. I'm jealous. I would love to be a morning person, and I have not cracked the code on that yet. So maybe someday. Cats or dogs?
Dogs, for sure.
Hot or cold? Which I think I know the answer to this one.
Still have my heat on in the house because.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you could be any animal, what would you be?
I'm going to answer that with saying it would be my dog. Um, the Weimaraner, I think we have very similar characteristics. He doesn't like to be alone. And this is back to the collaboration. Like, it's a joke that I never like to be by myself. And he's athletic. You know, so.
Cool. All right. And last one, what is your favorite place on earth?
Favorite place on earth is it's a place called Anna Maria Island. Probably people know about it by now. It's right next to Longboat Key, and my dad bought a beach house there in 1987, and it's just a part of my history, and it's a part of the whole family getting together, and it's really special. So that's where I'll be doing the shoot.
Yes. All right. Cool. I'm really excited. All right. I should get on a mailing list if you're emailing out that's going to happen. I want to get all the updates. All right. Well, that concludes our talk with Alyssa. Thank you so much. This was awesome. We kind of had a little bit of a mix up with scheduling with another Inside the Studio. So I was really excited about this one because we haven't done one in so long. This is the perfect one to start up to kick off summer with, I think, too. So I hope you have a wonderful summer season, Alyssa, taking lots of beautiful photos. I'm looking forward to seeing everything you do. To anyone who's listening right now, if you popped in toward the end, this is going to get posted so you can watch the whole 45-minute talk. Start from the beginning. I'm also going to post a written talk tomorrow on our website, so look out for that if you want to read it or see more photos and behind-the-scenes footage of Alyssa at work. So, Alyssa, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.
You're great. Thank you so much for.
Thanks. You are fantastic. So this was really, really fun. Have a great rest of your day. Go unwind now. Chill out a little bit. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.